Where's the button to make,
There we go.
wonder where the button is to make Steve host once I do need to do that at the end? Or can you do that from your end?
I can do it. Yeah,
Okay.
no worries. I'll help
Okay.
with that. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and get it started. I'm just going to bring it down here. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Angela. I'm with ProFarm Group, and my colleagues, Steve Bogash and Wiley Brown, are very pleased to welcome you to our webinar on maximizing tomato and pepper yield with biologicals. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we are a publicly traded company. So any information that is shared in this presentation should be used for educational purposes only. And should you be interested in investing in our parent company, BioSeries, BioX, that we welcome you to do your own due diligence and make your decisions that way. Before I introduce our speakers today, I wanted to tease you guys with a few gifts. Throughout the webinar, we'll be asking questions and challenging your knowledge on products or pests. And so we will be handing out some gifts after the webinar. We'll be mailing those to you. So for the winners, we will just need you to either share in the chat, or if you don't feel comfortable, contact us directly so that we have your mailing address and we can get these gifts in the mail right away. So on the left side, you see a little kind of gift pack of a hat and a koozie, wine cup, and notebook. And on the right, you have a very handy tool. It's just one of them. We're just sending one, but you have a choice between the Venerate or the Stargus buck knife, okay? Now for our speakers. So our first speaker is considered a tomato expert, Steve Bogash, my colleague in the Northeast. Steve began his career as the owner and operator of Greener Horizons, a garden center, nursery, greenhouse, and landscaping operation in Westminster, Maryland, before serving nearly 20 years as a horticulture educator and researcher for Pennsylvania State University Cooperative Extension in State College, Pennsylvania. Since retiring from Extension service, Steve joined ProFarm Group as the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic Product Development and Territory Business Manager. His territory runs from Southern Virginia to Caribou, Maine, and to the western edge of Ohio. He oversees several dozen university and private research trials, as well as many on-farm demonstrations for ProFarm Group. Steve and his wife Roberta live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he's honing his carpentry skills, building wooden boats, and renovating their home. So Steve, thank you again for being on the webinar, putting all this valuable information together.
Great to be here. I love talking about tomatoes.
And for bringing our guest speaker, Scott Huffman. So Scott Huffman is a field representative with Fermanos Foods, and he's been with Fermanos for 15 years, where he manages contracting, planting, crop maintenance, and harvesting for the Pennsylvania North Central Tier. He's part of the Pennsylvania Vegetable Growers Association Market Research Board, and he is a grant evaluator. And he's been doing demos with our products, Regalia Biofungicide, Stargus Biofungicide, Haven for heat stress during many of his years at Fermanos. So he has a lot of experience growing tomatoes and a lot of experience using our products growing tomatoes. And of course, when Scott is not busy out in the field, he enjoys fishing and time with his family. So again, Scott, thanks so much for being on. And we really look forward to learning from you and hearing your expertise on growing tomatoes with biologicals.
Thank you for having me.
And lastly, my colleague Wiley down in Florida, he joined ProFarm Group in January of 2022 and brings nearly a decade of crop management experience, ranging from working with plant and soil health to fertilizers and even seed selection. He has worked as a farm manager for Panola Farming Partnership and more recently was a crop advisor with Simplot Grower Solutions. Wiley has a BS in agriculture business from University of Louisiana at Monroe. So Wiley, thanks for being on as well. And he will be covering some of the insecticide information later in the presentation.
Thank you, Angela. Good to be here.
My pleasure. So I will go ahead and hand it over to Wiley.
Ended the slide control there, I think.
There we go.
There you
Does that work?
go. Let's see, bit of a delay, so just bear with me. That's all I got here. Is it showing on your end, Angela? It's changing, but none of the graphics are showing.
Hit it again. It's forward again.
Okay, understood. All right, let's see here. All right, so for you, those of you that are just tuning in and that don't know, Bioseries is our new parent company. Marone and ProFarm Group was created last year, July 12th, when Marone and Bioseries merged together. We also have a sister company called Rhizobacter in row crops. And we are combined about 45 years of experience altogether. Let's see here. It's not doing anything. There we go. And there's a little graph that shows kind of how the umbrella is formed. So ProFarm Group is the leader globally in biological crop solutions with over 550 farmer-focused crop solutions. Build proven products in over 45 countries at the moment as well. We have about 75 million acres of planted with ProFarm seed treatment throughout the world. 23% of the world's soybeans treated with ProFarm inoculants. Like I said, 45 years of innovations and country served. All right, let's see here. So a broad portfolio of our products here, everything from insecticides to disinfectants. And those of you that are familiar with our heat stress management as well. And Angela, I'm not sure, did usually go over all of these or just kind of let them look over? Are we here?
We can cover just, broad line of what each product is that would be relevant to the tomato growers, but obviously we'll be diving into it a little bit more. I think it's just helpful for those of you that grow more than tomatoes. We have a wide variety of products.
Okay, yeah. So for our fungicide disinfectants, we have Jet Ag and Jet Oxide for those in greenhouses and for soil amendment. Fungicide, Plant Health, Regalia and Stargus, one for powdery, one for downy mildew, which is Regalia for the powdery mildew, Stargus for downy. Regalia also is great on bacterial speck and spot as well. And Steve will go over some of that later, along with Haven for the stress reduction, everything from helping with transpiration and heat stress management. And then we have as of right now, we have 2 insecticides, and then we have some that are down our pipeline as well right now. Grandevo and Venerate are the 2 that I'll talk about later. Great for mites and lepidopteran pests. Those for those of you in row crops, we have Pacesetter, which is a plant health product and fungicide for row crops. And then our whole crop nutrition portfolio down there. I wouldn't imagine that many of you guys are doing much row crops, but for those that are, those are the names that you'll see in our portfolio. Okay, so we'll go over our agenda. Welcome and company overview. We've already gone over. Overview of common tomato and pepper diseases, including abiotic problems. That will be Steve Bogash, my partner. And hybrid biological synthetic programs to solve disease challenges, also Steve. Overview of common tomato and pepper insects and mite pests. I'll go over that along with hybrid biological synthetic programs to solve insect and mite challenges, what we call Biounite, and then some Q&A at the end. And with that, we'll hand it off to Mr. Scott Hoffman of Fermanos Foods. Angela, I guess. Mr. Scott is 15 years with Fermanos, manages contracting, planning, crop maintenance, harvesting for operations, mainly in Pennsylvania, North Central. Pennsylvania Vegetable Growers Association, Market Research Board, Grant Evaluator. He's been doing demos with Regalia, Stargus, Haven for many of those years. This thing's in my way. When not growing for Furman, Scott enjoys fishing and family. And with that, we will hand it off to Mr. Scott.
I'll take it here. And Scott, thank you so much for being on board here today. What you're looking at is a picture of harvesting in one of Fermano's fields, and I think that might be from this year. So Scott, welcome. I've got a few questions for you. You and I have obviously worked together for quite some time. So how long have you been using Regalia, and what was your motivation to start putting it in the tank?
I've been using Regalia for 9 years now. Our major problem is bacteria, spot and speck, and plant dieback, canker, bacterial canker, and we've been putting it in the program for nine plus years.
So you started using Haven recently, and that was some demo work that we did. So what was the motivation to start putting Haven in your tanks?
Well, the weather here in Pennsylvania, we can go anywhere from super hot and dry to super wet and cool. Every year has been a challenge in my 15 years of doing this. We started probably about 4 years ago, and right now we're using about 25% of our acres. I do close to 950 tomatoes, so we got about 200 acres under Haven that are not irrigatable. We don't have the equipment to have irrigation on every single acre that we have. So we do have some dry ground laden tomatoes. So we've been keeping an eye on those. And when we start seeing a drought stress issue, or a time frame that it's going to need some, help, we go ahead and apply the Haven, and we've seen the stress alleviate and still give us a very good crop on some very dry ground.
So Scott, one of the things I've been most interested in is the tank mixes that you used. You've shared some of your crop records with me before, some of your pesticide records. Share with the audience some of the tank mixes you've been using and some of the strategies that you've put into putting them out there.
Well, along with that question, Steve, I think we ought to go back to it. It's a full spectrum from seed all the way through. Not only in the tank, not only in the crop protection tank, but we're also bringing it out of the greenhouse. We're putting in the greenhouse 3 applications. Our seed from seed to field is 6 weeks. So we're looking at roughly 3 drenches in that time frame before it even comes to the field. We're putting 10 to 11,000 plants per acre. So that is a very economical way to get Regalia into the plant and begin that pH, that plant healthcare aspect of it. We start early May. Our soil is a little on the chilly side for that plant, and we can also still have frost, which we did this year, and it helps that plant to be able to transition from the greenhouse to a cooler soil up here in Pennsylvania. And then also, as we talked about tank mixes, I start out right away. Once we start spraying 2 to 3 weeks after planting, Manzate Coside and Manzate Coppers. Then we switch over to the Bravo, Revis Tops, Tanos, Previcure Flex. Try to keep all the bacteria away with the Regalia. And as before, the first 5 years I started here, Steve, there was fields that were just obliterated by bacteria, where the plant decline was horrific. Since we've started this program and tweaked this program each year, we have not had that total decline. 50, 60, 70 acre field totally go down and leave the fruit exposed to get sunburn, and then I get in trouble by the plant, for fruit quality actually. And we have not had that. Last year was a super hot, dry season where we were throwing water on with the overhead guns weekly, and pounding the plants with the water. And this year has been a cooler, dry, now wet, very wet summer. And we kept with somewhat a similar program, and I have not seen bacteria either situation. So it's been holding true in a lot of the environmental challenges we have up here in PA.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that. Now, so I've walked fields with you. One of the things that you regularly point out to me is that even though you're doing what I consider to be a relatively intensive disease management program, you are seeing a little bit of typically bacterial spot, but you've shown me it's been very limited to your inside canopy. Is that seems like that's still giving you the high quality fruit that you're looking for? Confirm that or not with me.
That is absolutely correct, Steve. We still get a little bit of leaf lesions, lower and internal, but if it does not get on my fruit, I'm not losing yield. I mean, my colleague has 35 years here. We've lost more tons of bacteria in the past than any other, like Phytophthora, early blights, anything like that. We've lost more tons of bacteria, but as of late, bacteria has been curbed by the program that we are using. And also, I want to throw in there, the Jet Ag. We up here in Pennsylvania, I have 200 acres this year of hail kissed tomatoes, and we had to put a couple rescue missions on, and Regalia was a very, very high part of that, and also Jet Ag. Because I mean, as soon as that plant got ripped right to shreds, we were at the situation where either we're gonna disc them under or trying to keep them going. But then you introduce all that pathogens, all those negative pathogens into the system. I mean, some of the plants look like they were skeletons, and we're actually still picking a 30-ton yield. We almost wrote the field off, a 62-acre field, and we're actually picking 30 plus ton tomatoes off it that are quality, very quality tomatoes. But we did an intense, Regalia, get that plant healthcare back in there and get that plant regrowing. And we were able to basically save that whole field.
And just for everybody listening, we're not going to be getting much into Jet Ag today, just out of time. We only have an hour altogether. Jet Ag is the ProFarm brand of peroxyacetic acid. And if you're interested in information on where to use that in these programs, feel free to contact Wiley or myself. Our contact information should be on this at the very end. And so we can get into that more. So Scott, you can spend a lot of money on pesticides. I know that from the planning that Fermanos does every year, return on investment is a real important part of all this. What kind of return on investment do you feel like you're getting from this combination of Haven and Regalia in your tanks?
We're looking at possibly putting like close to $600 per acre total, spectrum of crop protection, and we're getting a 2-to-1. I'm not saying yield, but when I bring in peelers to the plant, that is a better product than just bringing in stuff that goes into sauce as a crusher. So by far, we are getting a really good response and return on, now if you're looking at rates, I'm not putting as much on at one time. I think it calls for a quart rate. I've been spreading it out over maybe 5 to 6 sprays, applications of a pint and a half. And then if I do get into a trouble situation, I throw a heavier dose on. But again, you have to start it early and have that plant embedded in that healthcare if you're going to get any benefit out of it.
I agree with you. And so Scott, since you started using Haven, is that one of the you and I talk about quality a lot. So what do you feel like Haven's brought to the table in terms of reducing culls and increasing the number of peelers? And for everybody listening, peelers happen to be the high standard for processing tomatoes. I know there's some fresh market people on there. And when you deliver a trailer load, like you see here on the left, you deliver a trailer load to the plant of peelers. There's a premium on top of that.
Yes, absolutely. Haven, when you get in a situation where you get that high stress, heat stress, drought stress, what we'll also have a little bit of decline in plant coverage, and then the fruit is exposed. And if that happens, then I get sunburn. It's basically the same as a human being. Then it will get a like a leathery skin, and I will not be able to use that as a peeler. And even a crusher, it doesn't have the same color and texture, even to go in our crush product. So the Haven actually keeps that plant viable and actually keeps that fruit going in the right direction during a drought situation, where I can't get any water to it.
Good. We're going to be talking about all these products in a little more detail. So Scott, before I let you go back to harvesting, and you can see from the images, Scott's having an awful lot of fun in what he's doing. Anything you'd like to add to the webinar before I let you go and we go back to the rest of this?
Basically, just to reiterate, you have to have this program in early, preemptively, before you see anything. Once you start trying to play catch up, you're gonna be in trouble. It's really hard to go after, especially a bacteria, and try to save that. But if you have the strength in your plant, with Regalia being a huge part of our program now, we have seen a very big influx in quality.
Scott, thank you very, very much. I appreciate your participation today. You and I obviously be talking more. You are now free to go back to irritating your crew.
Well,
On
thank you,
behalf of
Steve,
Pro,
for having us.
yeah, man, on
Today.
behalf of Pro Farm, we'll catch up soon.
All right, take care, Steve. Take care.
All right, see ya. All
Yep,
right,
bye-bye.
so let's move this along. I have learned so much walking fields with Scott. So there we go. Let's go back one slide. There we go. So I want to talk about Haven for a couple of minutes. This is kind of one of our sleeper products that originally we were looking at it for other crops, and with work that I've done with Scott at Fermanos and other tomato growers, we've started applying this now on fruit like tomatoes and peppers. It's primarily intended to prevent sunscald. But one of the things we found is from the mode of action that we'll get into, Haven does a fabulous job of producing overall better fruit. And we're going to get into this a lot more. This is a high return on investment for a very small amount of product. You only need to apply it every 2 weeks. Unlike most heat stress products that leave a white film on, that's very, very difficult to wash off, especially on a fruit like a tomato. You find that Haven is a clear thing, and it primarily works through its mode of action. You can put this right in the tank with everything else. So here's our first chat question of the day. I hope somebody's paying attention to the chat. And so these are typical tomato nutritional problems. And for the first couple moments here, the question is the slide in the middle with the 3 tomatoes on it. You can see that there is cracking on there, but you can see the discoloration on the tomato. So the first person who names what this is, and can I see the chat? Apparently I can't see the chat right now. So I'm not sure why I can't, but whoever can name what that problem is, and there are multiple names for it, you'll win the first prize of the day, and we'll just need to get your other contact information. So Angela, I think I need a little help here because I can move the slides, but I cannot see the chat.
Yeah, I apologize. So for some reason, the chat is disabled, and I've been frantically trying to figure out how we can enable it or add a Q&A.
So we're not gonna do this. We'll play that
Yeah.
game in Q&A. So so these are typical tomato abiotic nutritional problems you're looking at here. We're just going to plow forward. We don't have time to play right now. So on the left is blossom end rot, which is typically caused by a calcium uptake problem. And there's a lot of things that go into that, but that's blossom end rot. In the middle is yellow shoulder. I've also heard it called gray wall, ghost wall, and other things. This is a lack of potash at the time that that fruit is set. Again, another complex nutritional problem. You can see with the cracking, there's a lot more going on, but if you were to slice those fruit through, you'd see that there would be a whitish or light ring on the inside of the flesh. And then of course, on the right of your screen is typical radial cracking. And so somebody would have gotten a knife for the yellow shoulders thing, but we're just going to push on. The reason I put this up here, and I'm trying to forward now. Come on, there we go. So the reason I put this up here is Haven does a really nice job of alleviating these problems, and a lot of it is through its mode of action. So here's some work that was done by Jerry Brust at University of Maryland. He did this in 2020. The variety was Celebrity. You can see the table, and what we were looking at is a reduction in culls. That's one of the things that interested Scott the most at Huffman's is culls cost them a lot. It takes a lot more time to clean them off the belt. Obviously, you can't peel a cull. And so anything you can do that reduces cull, and it does it over a much longer season. And so this is one of the big things that you see is that you see this reduction in cracking. So even when it's not sunscald conditions, you'll see this increase in fruit quality. Tomatoes are so valuable. I love to do tomato math in front of large groups of growers because they're so valuable to the acre that just applying Haven every 2 weeks at the 77 ounce per 100 gallon rate is enough to produce these kind of changes. And that's a very economical way to go. Move on. So this is that same slide blown up a little bit, but this is now yield. And so not only are we seeing a reduction in culls, but we're also seeing an increase in yield. Where I was most interested in this trial, this is an older variety, Celebrity, but it's often used as a standard in research trials, is even in later tomatoes, that's having an impact. And I know from many years of experience working tomatoes is that what you'll often see is end of season tomatoes. After you've been through a field and picked it multiple times, you'll start to see the overall quality goes down. So Haven is a way that you can actually work to increase that quality as you go into that later season. So, you see this across multiple varieties. This is the same slide as the last slide, except you'll notice in the middle, the variety is Mountain Gem. And so this is not something you just see in a variety like Haven. Mountain Gem's a much newer variety, and you still see this same continual yield increase all season long that holds up to those late season tomatoes. This is results from Fermanos, actually, where it says Northumberland here. This was a field scale. So we do a lot of small scale research stuff, typical, replicated plot stuff. This was a very large river bottom field. I believe it was 67 acres. Scott and I cut the field in half. Half of the field got their full regular program, but not Haven. The other half of the field just got Haven added to it, as I was describing, 77 ounces per 100 gallons. And you can see, and that's 0.6%. It's a volume to volume, but you can see the difference in the increase in yield. 10 tons per acre. That was beyond anything that I would have expected. Haven is one of those products that just makes more money. And, one of the big problems with tomatoes is cracking, yellow shoulders, blossom end rot. And we're going to talk about a little bit and how it works. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had the mode of action slide also in here. So the mode of action, the two primary ways that Haven accomplishes both the sunscald prevention, but also the increase in quality is it increases transpiration. So that movement of solutes in the soil up through the roots, through the root hairs, up through the roots, through trend, that movement up there, it grabs magnesium, calcium, and potash much better than the plants would do alone. And that's where you get this increase in quality. At the same time, part of the sunscald prevention, because it is increasing the amount of water movement through the plant, it reduces sunscald, but it also increases the amount of reflection of UVB, and that's how you get this sunscald reduction. What I've seen in the field is we'll often see as if you were growing 4 to 5 degrees cooler. I think that's a substantial difference in producing quality tomatoes. It'll do it on processing tomatoes. It'll do it in field stake tomatoes, and we see it in high tunnel tomatoes as well. So let's shift gears here. We're going to get into Regalia. Regalia is one of those products. When I was working for Penn State, I was handed my first jug of Regalia in 2008, and I was able to go from a fully synthetic program growing tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers to reducing the amount of synthetic pesticides by 40 to 60% just by putting this in. Regalia has a really interesting mode of action that we'll get into. One of the things I like about it, you can see at the bottom here, is it's got a 4-hour REI, 0 PHI. So very, very flexible in the way it works in scheduling. Here's some of the particular parts for use. Scott had mentioned this in his part. You've got to use it as a preventative treatment. So Regalia works by turning on a plant's defense systems, does a lot of secondary things as well, but that if it's there ahead of time, what I find is that it dramatically reduces the speed that diseases come on. They gives you a lot more time to think. Since they come on slower, you simply are able to do a lot more to prevent diseases. The typical application is about on a 7-day interval. You can go out to 10, but if you're on a weekly spray schedule, applying it at 1 to 2 quarts per acre at 50 gallons to the acre is a great way to prevent it. It does a standalone job on bacterial spot, but we're going to get into this a little bit more as I show you some of the research. Regalia is one of these products that continues to surprise me. So this was a trial that I did on one of Fermano's fields this year. So this is processing tomatoes. When they were put in, they went typical water wheel transplanter, and 10 rows down the middle of this 80+ acre field did not get Regalia in the transplant solution. That's what you see on the left. And then on the right, that's a typical plant out of the part of the whole rest of the field that got Regalia in the transplant solution. You know, this is one of those things you can really see where Regalia does a great job in promoting plant health. There had been absolutely no rain. This was 4.5 weeks post-transplanting. There had been no rain. The only water it had gotten was in that transplant water. And this is the increase that it saw. The plant on the left was limited to the really dry part of the soil. Most of that was relatively dried out. The plant on the right, it was dry down to about 4 or 5 inches. And that plant on the right had roots, and you can see significant roots going down 9-10 inches. So it was getting into a layer of soil that still had sufficient moisture. And you can see the size of the plant as well. We have composite samples as well, but I wanted you to see these side by side. This is kind of a side effect of the plant health part of Regalia. This is a plant extract. It's Renautria saccharinensis. You can apply it foliar or airily or chemigation. It's a liquid. The typical rate is the rate on the label is 1 to 4 quarts. We recommend 1 to 2 quarts. Very seldom do you need to go over that. And again, need to be able to apply it ahead of time. It is very, very tank mix friendly. If you're going to do something new that you haven't tried before, I always recommend a jar test. This is how I stay out of a lot of trouble. Mix it up as you would proportionally in a jar, and just, you know, that's a great use for a nice clean mason jar. I've mixed it with almost everything, but I put a note over here. There are some places that you want to avoid, and you can see on here the water pH should be between 6 and 8. Two products that I avoid mixing with Regalia are the potassium silicates, very, very high pH, and also the potassium bicarbonate compounds. And there's a good number of both of those on the market. They're very high pH, and what we will occasionally see is some light gelling in the tank. It's not like Jello, but it's a gelling in the tank, and what it looks like it's mucus coming out of your spray nozzles. That's a long cleaning job. It's not going to hurt your crop any, but you're sure not going to get a good layer on. And so avoid those high pH products. Again, the way we cover ourselves, it's the first time you've done it, just make sure that you are doing a jar test. pH should be between 6 and 8. Regalia alone is rain fast in 1 hour. Regalia does not need a sticker or a spreader, but whatever else you're adding to the tank may. And so we often use it with stickers and spreaders, New Film P and quite a few other products. So here's the modes of action. Because it turns on the SAR, ISR pathways inside the plant, which releases this cascade effect of phytoalexins and pathogenesis resistance proteins, Regalia does an amazing job at slowing the development of resistance and just makes the plant overall a tougher critter. It strengthens cell walls, so it'll deposit lignins and suberins in cell walls. We'll often see I know Wiley deals with a lot of powdery mildew down south. We only see it up here in high tunnels, typically at the end of the season. But one of the places that Regalia really shines out is in preventing powdery mildew. And we believe this is largely because the cell walls are just substantially thicker, and it just wears out the powdery mildew. And then lastly, one of the things that you often see with Regalia, especially the first time you apply it, is your plants will green up. It actually stimulates the plants to produce more chlorophyll. And at the same time, unlike products like Actigard that often will have a yield suppressing effect, with Regalia, we will often see enhanced yield. There's no yield lag with Regalia. So here's a couple, I'm not going to bog you guys down on too many data slides, but I want to show you some of the dramatic ones. So this is out of California, and this is on Fusarium. This is part of that plant health effect. And so in the left column is the percent Fusarium. This is obviously a field that was inoculated. The untreated control had significant Fusarium. Seems to be a real problem in the East this year. You can see some effect from Preaxor, but Regalia alone at this 20-ounce rate did a significant job of suppressing Fusarium. So, Angela, we're still where we were, where we don't have a check, correct?
So Steve, I need to take back control in order to change some features. I need to take back host control. So I figure at the end of your section, we'll have a little moment where I work on that and hopefully have a little Q&A for your section.
Gotcha. So okay. I want everybody to know what this one is. This is an important one. Scott had mentioned this. This is bacterial spot on tomato. I'm sorry, bacterial speck on tomato. This is Pseudomonas syringae. Very, very common. Cost to growers here in the Northeast. I serve from Virginia northward quite a bit. And so this one is bacterial speck. And then there we go. And this is bacterial spot. And that's Xanthomonas vesicatoria. Very, very common diseases. This would have been a lot of fun. So this is some data on that. So I didn't put any bacterial canker slides in here. And the reason is although we often see a suppression of canker with Regalia, not quite the level of control that we see with bacterial speck and spot. So this is an older study out of Florida, and you can see on the left the disease severity, that's percentage, that goes up as high as 32% for the untreated control. The combination of actinovate and Coside did a decent job. Serenade Max and Coside, again, you can see a little better control, but Regalia plus Nordox, and Nordox is another copper at 1 1/4, that gave the best control. This is significant, and we see this over and over again out in the field. We've had a lot of experience now, but Regalia plus copper makes a major difference. And for me, I like to do the tank mix, this Biounite tank mix. And Biounite is the way we talk about this in-house when we're not using all organic products. Regalia plus Mancozeb plus copper. To me, that is the gold standard of a preventative program on tomatoes and peppers to prevent bacterial diseases and also most fungal diseases, Alternaria, botrytis, etc. And that we also see significant increases in marketable yield. I did a lot of research for Penn State for a long time, and I often question when I see yield studies, but when you do this in large field plots, where you're actually field scale, they translate directly. You can see that you definitely see this enhanced yield. So we're going to shift gears real quick as we move through fungicides. I'm just watching the time real quick. This is our Stargus Biofungicide. Typical rates for Stargus, you'll see the label is a 1 to 4 quart rate. 2 quarts, I'll even put 3 quarts on tomatoes. This is great for alternaria, also fusarium, Cercospora leaf spot, septoria leaf spot. Again, and you can tank mix Regalia and Stargus together. We've done Regalia Stargus and copper, Regalia Stargus copper with Mancozeb. This is another organic product. It's OMRI listed, MRL exempt, 4-hour REI. This is a very unique strain of Bacillus amyloliquefaciens, and I say that because there's a lot of amyloliquefaciens products on the market. This particular strain is much more than the control it offers is much more than what you see from most of the strains on the market. The strain really does make quite a difference. Oh, and you can apply this foliarly. One of the best places as a rescue treatment in the field is to put Stargus through the drip. Does a tremendous job at managing fusarium and several other root-borne diseases. I don't know how that happened on that. Oh, okay, I see this slide. Put them all up. So these are the modes of actions of Stargus. When we ferment Stargus, it makes peptides. That's what this strain of Bacillus amyloliquefaciens does. So when you get a jug of Stargus, you are getting these very active molecules, these peptides, along with spores and living bacteria. And so this is also a colonizer. Especially in the soil. Stargus is like so many rhizobacteria, does a great job of colonizing in the soil, which is part of how it helps there, but it's also the peptides. And like so many of these bacterial type products, it also stimulates the ISR and SAR tract. That is much more of a Regalia thing, but like most of these molecules, most of these biomolecules, you get at least some stimulation of that. It's the peptides are the active part of Stargus. Although the colonies, when it colonizes plant surfaces, it definitely helps and it will produce more, but it's those peptides you get from us in the jug. So this is fusarium, and this is fusarium management on tomatoes. This is one of the real strong places for Stargus. You can see the untreated control here at 50% fusarium. Preaxor helps some. Stargus, but Stargus in programs with other products, that's where you see the real difference. And so you see a significant effect from the Stargus, but then you get this additive effect where you see almost complete control when you start putting Stargus in programs. And Wiley, I believe it's time for you to do insecticide. So I'm going to give up remote control and it's back to you.
Okay, just let's take a moment and I'm gonna try to get the chat working or the Q&A working. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Let's see if I can, okay. Panelists can chat, there we go. That's all I needed, guys. I just needed the attendees can chat with everyone. There we go, guys. Now give it a try. Hopefully the chat should be working. And I think now would be a great time if there's any quick questions for Steve. And I do apologize about that hassle. For those of you that work on lots of software platforms, you know, things change constantly. So let's just test the chat. If somebody would like to put in a question or let me know that it's working. And then we'll hand it over to Wiley to keep going if there are no questions. There we go. Hey, awesome. Okay. Sorry about that little hiccup, guys. Hey, if you have questions, go ahead and post them. We're going to keep going because we have 15 minutes left. I mean, we can go a little over, but we do want to respect your time. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, Wiley.
Hey guys. All right. So don't know if everybody wants to go ahead and put in your location where you're from. You didn't get to do that earlier. That'd be greatly appreciated. It's always cool to see who tunes in where.
And watch the chat, gentlemen, because I do see a couple of questions popping up.
Okay. Steve, we have what do you want to read a couple? Just wait 1 second maybe and let
I can if you want, sure. So then one of the questions is how late is too late to apply? And it's really important to understand that Regalia does not work on pathogens. It has no effect on bacteria or fungal diseases. It works by making the plant a much more defensive organism. That's really important. So the earlier you get it on, the better. Scott Huffman earlier had mentioned that they started in the seedling stage. By the time it gets out to the field, that's a 5.5-week-old seedling. They've already done 3 applications of Regalia. The idea is put it on, keep it on. You can go as far as 10 days out, but this is a preventative thing. It's very, very difficult to clean up a bacterial disease once it gets in a field. And long rotations. We could do a whole presentation on bacterial diseases, but remember, it's a preventative. Stargus will give you some cleanup of fungal diseases, very little activity on bacterial diseases, but on fungal diseases, Stargus will actually give you some cleanup. All right, Wally, back to you.
I have a question for you on Stargus, since it is our only living jugs, living organisms. How do you handle Stargus? Is it pretty easy to handle, certain temperature range? Because that is a pretty big deal when you're talking about living organisms in a jug.
So Stargus, that's a great question. So Stargus you have a 2-year shelf life on Stargus, and we often will test it, and it goes out to about 30 months actually. That's right from our lab. So you got about 30 months on it. The idea is don't let it cook. It is a living thing, but unless I'm using it for a soil application, I'm much more concerned with the peptides that are already in there, and they are robust. You can put them in solution with copper and not hurt the peptides. And I was surprised because I'm also on our field development team. I was really surprised that you can mix Stargus and Jet Ag. I would have bet against that, but they're really tough spores to kill.
Yeah, because in most times you would think a disinfectant would wipe out those living organisms. All right, I appreciate the answer. Just kind of a question that didn't get asked. I know a lot of times when I'm out in the field, people will ask me how our products are handled, and most of them are heat killed, so it's not a worry. But Stargus, I think people should know.
It makes growing tomatoes a lot easier, especially for early blight and late blight. Stargus is very effective.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Well, okay. Well, let's dive right into the insecticides. Like Angela said, we're kind of getting short on time here, so I'll try to make this as painless as possible for y'all. Let's see. So for those that weren't on earlier, my name is Wally Brown. I'm the territory sales rep for the Southeast in Florida, mainly South Georgia, South Alabama, and the whole state of Florida and Puerto Rico. So the first insecticide that we're going to talk about is Grandevo. Let's see if there we go. It is a 30% dead Chromobacterium substigae strain and spent fermentation. It's a water dispensable granule, not to be confused with, Steve, I forget the name of the old product, Grandevo, that was the wettable powder. You hear me?
That was DF.
Okay, so Grandevo DF, you said it had told me yesterday, I wasn't here when we had that product. It was not very easy to use. So this is a different formulation than that, and it's much easier to use, much better product.
Yeah, it went into solution like every dry flowable powder. It was hard to get into solution.
Mode of action, it's actually a couple of different ones. Agitation and repellency is the first one you'll get. It gets sticky on the leaf, kind of makes the mites and thrips and other bugs a little angry, agitated, keeps them out of the field. They don't want to be on the leaf as much, so coverage is a big deal there. The second is a gut disruptor. It actually stops feeding instantly. You are looking at somewhat of a longer kill time, usually 4 to 7 days is what I see. But no worries, you will stop seeing feeding almost immediately. And it reduces egg laying and fecundity as well, which is a big deal, especially when you look into the rotation that you use Grandevo on every 7 days with a different insecticide in the mix there. Usually you want to use Grandevo every 2 weeks with something on that 7th day, probably a contact, to get a quicker kill rate. Let's see, like I said, it stops feeding in seconds. The target pest, newly hatched caterpillar larvae, nymphs and adults, piercing, sucking, and mites, spotted winged Drosophila, which is not that big of a deal in tomatoes, but if I have any strawberry or blueberry growers on, you would be interested in that. And thrips, very, very low impact on beneficials, almost no effect actually on most. All right. So the rate we suggest is a 1 to 3 pound. I think that, for tomatoes, for most of your target pests there, you're looking at a 2 to 3. I would think more is going to be more beneficial to you. Don't want you wasting money just throwing out 1 pound just to miss a lot of those target pests. Tank mix compatible with most everything that I've seen. Like Steve said, it's dry, so I would use the jar test with that. Like you said, it's a real good use of those mason jars that you don't actually use for storing food. The interval is 4 to 7 days. Like I said, I think the 2-week program is good with a contact insecticide in between on that 7th day. Product features is MRL exempt, 4-hour REI and 0-day PHI. So those end of season before your harvest starts, if you have any flare-ups, there is a great use for Grandevo, and all our products actually are 0 PHI. So it's a good benefit as well. Excellent shelf life. I don't know, Steve, you'll have to help me out on this. Exactly how long is that? Do you know?
3-year shelf life on Grandevo.
Okay, that's what I figured that's what it was close to, just wasn't 100%.
And while since you're asking about storage, for all of our products, we recommend don't let them freeze and don't cook them. So the idea is don't let them get much over 90 and don't let them get below 35. It's a pretty wide range.
Yeah,
do not store them behind the window in the front of your pickup truck cab.
And that is a lot better in my opinion than most other biologicals. A lot of them have pretty much 70 degrees room temperature. You want to keep them around there. We actually have a pretty good range, and you don't have to worry, if it gets to be 88, 89 outside, which it in Florida and the Southeast stays that way most of the year. You don't have to worry about it as long as it's in the shade and not just cooking in the sun. So the Grandevo WDG Bioinsecticide, low risk of beneficials, like I'd said a second ago. Sweet potato whitefly destroyer, mealybug destroyer, predatory mite, bumblebees is a big one, obviously. Parasitic wasp, another good one. Predatory midge, rave beetle, aphid parasitoid, and true bug. And I got another couple little things over here. Like I said, on Grandevo, you want, just like all our products, you want to be out early and often. Really good on nymphs, the nymph stage, young adults. Just make sure to get it out there. It's recommended 500 to 100 gallons per acre. You don't want it so diluted that it runs off the plant, obviously. Really good coverage is what you're looking for that first mode of action there for agitation. And no maximum number of applications per season as well on Grandevo. So our second Venerate, actually on Grandevo, I wanted to talk about a couple of the good pests that it targets. We have really good data on whitefly. I didn't get to enter some of these data points onto the slide because I didn't find them until last minute. Really good on whitefly in grower standard practices, with something like malathion. Really good on whitefly. And I know in South Florida that's a huge pest right now, hard to target, hard to get rid of. Mites and aphids as well as thrips. So we cover a pretty broad range of insects there with our WDG. Young caterpillar lepidopteran pest, very good on tomato pinworm and hornworm. So just some pests there to think of. And there are some data slides on our website. And if you need any more on that data, you can reach out to me or Steve. We have plenty of it. Just didn't get entered into the slideshow today.
And Wally, if I could for a minute,
Yep.
go back one slide. You were showing all the beneficial. So as part of the research team, we've had numerous labs, university labs, test our products against all of these beneficial insects. And when folks ask me, how can that possibly be when you're doing all this control of problematic insects, pests, but you're not crashing beneficials? The primary mode of entry of Grandevo, and Wally's going to be talking about Venerate, is through ingestion. The insects must eat it. And so none of these insects that you see on here, they all eat other insects. They don't eat leaves. They don't eat our product. And that's one of the ways that they are able to avoid getting any kind of a dose that's going to be a real problem for them. I find that really interesting.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. Like you'd think if they're eating it directly after that they would ingest some as well. But obviously that's not the case. So our second bioinsecticide is Venerate. Its active ingredient is 94% heat-killed Burkholderia rhinogenesis, spent fermentation. It targets mainly sucking and chewing insects and mites, newly hatched larvae and nymphs, and adult insects and mites as well. Really good on newly hatched larvae and nymphs. You want to get early and often, like I said, with all these biopesticides. Application is 1 to 4 quarts. Again, one if you're in tank mix with some, but I recommend 3 to 4 quarts most of the time with Venerate as well. 7 to 10 day interval. It's a really good product to mix with that Grandevo every 7 days. If you're an organic acre, it's a really good program, strong program. Let's see here. So the mode of action is ingestion. Insects and mites ingest spray deposits or feed on treated foliage. Like with Grandevo, the death is a little bit slower, 4 to 7 days. Also, it stops feeding instantly almost. Interferes with the probing behavior of piercing, sucking insects and mites. Stops feeding rapidly in chewing insects as well. The residual control, superior residual control of susceptible Lepidopteran compared to a BT insecticide. And Steve, if you would, because I'm just, not the tech guy that you are, would you elaborate a little bit on why it's better than a BT on the residual control?
Sure. So thanks, Wally. So one of the things that we see is that obviously there are a number of BTs around. And so especially things like corn earworms, but quite a few of them are resistant to certain BTs. You get more of a universal effect from Venerate. And while the BTs are certainly better than they once were in being field stable, typically BTs broken down in 3 to 5 days in really bright sun. Venerate's going to stay active for 7 days, even out to 10 days. So you get a wider level of control. And because it doesn't break down under UV radiation, it's stable for a whole lot longer. I got to tell you, if you're dealing with Lepidopteran pest and you want to see a boost in control, one of the best things you can do is combine Venerate with BT. For at least the first 3 to 5 days, you get a broader part of control. But Wally, we'll be getting into that when I do those blob charts at the end.
Okay, good deal. I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit. Like I said, I'm not the technical whiz that you are, so I can talk about how it works and things, but once the details on other products, I'll let you kind of control that. So the product features, just like Grandevo, 4-hour REI, 0-day PHI. Again, end of year, whenever you're even on conventional, especially on conventional, when you can't put some of those synthetic chemistries on the field with that PHI, Grandevo and Venerate are great options to rotate with those 7 and 14 days. Great shelf life, Steve. I think 3 years on this as well. Yeah, same
Correct.
kind of air, 90 degrees and lower, just don't freeze. So tank mix compatible, everything that I've seen. We mix it with a wide variety of everything from nutritionals to other insecticides, including synthetics. It's actually really good on a couple of insects that it needs a little bit of help on some, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. Low impact beneficials, once again, minimal to no effect on all. Just because I'm guessing the same way with this, Steve, is that it's a gut disruptor and they're not eating the foliage. So
That is correct.
So we're going to play the little game. We'll actually be able to play the game now, I think, in the chat. You name the insect vector here. This is a disease transmitted by a type of insect. And if you would, you can write in the chat what you think the name of the insect is that transmits this disease.
Nobody's put anything in the chat yet. Everybody's being shy at this point. Come on, we got a buck knife to give out here, folks.
Oh, we got
Oh,
one.
There you go.
Yep.
So AM, make sure that you send us in your
Alessandro said thrips, and that is correct. This is tomato mosaic virus. And Scott, you put sweet potato whitefly. It somewhat looks a little bit the same, but different disease. So yeah. So Alessandro, you are the winner. If you put in your shipping address and information. Angela, are we doing that on the chat, or are we doing that through probably an email? Probably send it through an email just so it's a little more private.
Absolutely. So I'll put Steve, do you want to put your email in since the buck knives are in your possession? Okay.
Yep.
And, or you can privately chat with people, right? So if you want to do that feature, otherwise just if Steve's email is in the chat, people can email Steve with their address.
I got it.
All right. Going on, but like I said, Scott, that's a good guess. They do look pretty similar. Just keep in mind when you see mosaic, you see the circles. It's a pretty good indicator through tomatoes, watermelon, or whatever it may be. The mosaic virus is pretty obvious with the circles on there. Let's see, and then here we have another one. So here's another option for you guys to try to guess on here what the insect pest is here, or casual organism is here, as Steve put on the top. If you can guess that, what's caused the damage here, you'll win another prize. So first person to guess this one.
Sorry, Corey.
All right.
Not you yet. Keep going. Although stink bug, actually, I see why you thought that might be stink bug. That is not stink bug.
Yeah.
There you go. SG.
Yep.
Scott, I will communicate with you.
One.
Nice call, Scott.
Good job. All right. So Scott, get with Steve, and you'll get your gift as well. All right, and here we'll go over a little bit of data with Venerate XC. We do actually have some data put in from Venerate. So as you'll see over here is I can't really hardly read it. It's a little bit small. Let's see. For some reason mine is showing up a little small. Okay, here we go. Steve, you got that taken care of with Scott?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. So here's a Venerate XC for a bioinsecticide for bell papers on thrips. You'll see 27 to 63% reduction versus the untreated check. Here you'll see on the first one, I'm guessing these are different applications. One has it on there and one's not. 34% improvement versus the UTC on the 5th, 5/29/2019. And then you'll have the incidence percentage, which is 20% difference as well.
It's a good thripicide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Very good on mites, thrips, and it's actually a good, it works well on whitefly as well as Grandevo does. It's actually a good program to go back and forth, especially if you put a sail in the tank with Venerate. It's a really good program for whitefly for those people in South Florida and Georgia that really need help with whitefly this season. There's another bell pepper thrips Glades Crop Care in Florida did for us. We're really good partners with them, really like the work that they do. Hopefully someone from Glades is on. They do a really good job for our products. 50% reduction in thrips. And I guess that's total per leaf, not adult or anything like that. It's not really broken down. It's just the total, I'm guessing, per flower.
So I was responding to a chat. Incident thrips per flower.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's not unusual to see when you open up a flower, to see high numbers of thrips, and you can see Venerate alone, which is surprising. We'll cut them in half.
Yep. And that's a good good indicator of how well Venerate works. A lot of our trials will show Venerate tank mixed with another biological or with a synthetic chemistry, and it'll kind of show you the difference it makes in tank. But just that alone versus untreated check, you can tell where you're making your money at. Let's see here, another bell pepper, Glades as well, same study, I would believe. This is what I was talking about here, is Venerate plus Coragen. You can see the difference it makes, like I said, versus Coragen alone. Looks almost like another 50%, or another, I guess, 50% of the percentage. So you're looking at 4 to 8% Coragen plus Venerate versus 12 to 5% at those 2 different days spraying. So we like to call it a Biounite program. Steve will talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. Here's a really good indicator of how well it works, especially on Lepidopteran.
And I want to emphasize on Leps, we're talking first and second instar. So once you get third instar or larger, you really need a knockdown product, a pyrethroid or something like that. But Venerate's very, very effective at those first 2 instars.
And just keep in mind, in Florida, guys that are in the Southeast, I don't know if Steve deals with the resistance we do down here, but even once you put that pyrethroid on late in the season, you're not getting full kill. So you deal with a lot of resistance there. I know that getting on early here is a really big deal to keep infestations low. Venerate's a good product early on, like he said, to help with resistance management. But if you get on early with Venerate, you can see what it'll do here. So, all right, and that's the end of the data on Venerate and the bioinsecticide portion of our presentation. And Steve, I'll turn it back over to you so you can go over the programs that we use these products in.
Okay. I think I'm back to control. Okay. As soon as this thing lets me move forward, I'm going to wrap this up for today. There we go. Okay. So I was challenged 8 years ago. I was challenged at the Mid-Atlantic Fruit and Vegetable Conference by some growers, and they were complaining that they had completely lost control of Western flower thrips. Nothing was really working all that well. They had tried all the standard remedies. And folks, I've been using the bio product since 2008. I'm pretty well known for that as a speaker on the Northeast Circuit. And the comment was, come up with some of your bio programs that we can try on Western flower thrips. So this is the result of a lot of demos, a lot of trials. And so what I've come up with here is we rotate between Grandevo and Venerate, and CG just happens to be our small product line. Don't worry about that. All Grandevo is the same. All Venerate is the same. So you rotate between Grandevo and Venerate. You adjust the frequency of applications based on pressure. So if you're just doing basic management, you know when spider mites are going to arrive. You know when thrips are typically going to arrive. You apply them every 7 to 10 days. But one of the things I found is that in order to both increase the speed of control, Wiley had mentioned, some of these are 4 days or more before you actually see before you see mortality. So what I like to do is every time I put Grandevo out, I am tank mixing it with one of these tank mix partners from the bottom row, and the same with Venerate. It increases its efficacy substantially. And the side effect that we got, so this was designed for Western flower thrips. The side effect that we got from these tank mixes is now we're seeing highly effective control of thrips, and I'm talking all thrips, of all the thrips that we've put it on so far, chili thrips, onion thrips, etc., aphids, most aphids, whitefly, spider mites, broad mites, etc. And so by doing this as a program, so where you're adjusting the frequency between the first two, between Grandevo and Venerate. But so like an example, so today I would put my first application Grandevo on, but I'd follow this arrow over and I would mix it with one of the insecticidal soap products. Next time I go out with Venerate, and I may put it in a tank mix with Bavaria bassiani, and there are a number of those products out as well. There's just a couple of examples there. Then I come back to Grandevo, and maybe this time I put it out with one of the azadirachtin products like Azagard, Azadirect, etc. And you get where this is going. And the reasoning behind this is we know that thrips develop resistance really quickly. We know that aphids are tough as nails. One of the best ways to kill them is by taking 2 bricks and grinding an aphid between the 2 bricks. It's highly effective, but it's very slow. So by using this as the base, this rotation between Grandevo and Venerate, and then always adding a tank mix partner to it, you get this highly effective control of all the small sucking and piercing and rasping insects like thrips, but you also get fairly effective control of young Lepidoptera. All of these are very easily available in the market, and you can see over here the Azaria products and also Metarhizium. And I saw that Lalamand has re-released their Metarhizium product. It was off the market for a bit, but Lalamand now has re-released that. It is not organic. All the rest of these products, there are organic formulas available. But I want to take this to the next level. So this works well on bell peppers, on tomatoes, on cucumbers, for all the small sucking insects. So we're going to take it to the next level. One of my frustrations with the basic program is, although, as Wally was pointing out, you will often see a cessation of feeding very quickly, I like dead insects. And so if you need to do a knockdown, you have an example, you have a high population of adult thrips, which means you've also got all of the other, you got eggs and all the other parts to it as well. You can come and for one time add in one of the spinosad products. That's why this is floating out by itself. So you can add in Entrust or Radiant or one of the spinosad products. You use it one time. The reason I don't like using it multiple times is we know, especially with thrips, that you're going to see resistance develop very, very quickly. I don't like giving up those products. And so I want to be able to save these products, use them when I need to knock down an adult population. And if you use this one time in this mix, wherever you are in this Grandevo Venerate rotation partner program, you'll still get the nice knockdown. But if you come back 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks later, and you've had another explosion in population, more than likely you're still going to be able to use this spinosad mode of action to get that knockdown that you're looking for. We know that there's a constant bunch of pests moving in and out, and so your pest populations are going to change. The idea behind this whole program, as you can all imagine, is to prevent resistance. That's what I don't want to see. I don't want to have a resistant population. And so with this basic program, Grandevo, Venerate, and the other 5 partners, you get very effective control without seeing that typical explosion in resistance. You'll notice up in the upper left, I put pyrethrums and pyrethroids, and my same comments for Western flower thrips apply, except now I'm going to put aphids in. So you can use this to knock down a lot of adult aphids. The basic very bio-based program is still going to give you good control, but now you can knock down an adult population. And I'll give you an example where I saw this. This was in one of the cucumber greenhouses that I managed for Penn State. Inside of the louvers, I would regularly see aphids would come, they come in and develop a population there right inside the louvers. And so what I could do is, rather than spraying the whole house, I could just add pyrethroids in to that particular part, so I could do a spot spray and I wouldn't have to spray the whole house. So there's a lot of ways that you can manage this. I had mentioned earlier this tank mix of BT with, especially with Venerate for Lepidopteran larvae. That's why that's over here. I think it gives a real boost to the control of lep larvae. And you can see how to use this. If you want these charts, again, you can contact me. I believe Angela normally makes these presentations available. She can correct me on that or not, but I hope you get the idea where this is going from. Wally had mentioned a sale before. I have used a sale as one of the tank mix partners before. So you can expand and contract this program. But what I really like is for all of the small and younger pests, by staying with this program and adjusting your frequency of application. And part of the reason you do that, so Western flower thrips in my market, the Northeast, middle of the summertime, it will go from egg to egg laying adult in 7 days. If you're a once a week sprayer, you're always going to have some adults out there laying eggs, and the eggs are just, they're very tough to kill. If you go to every 4 or 5 days, 3 times in a row, you can do the math on that. By the time you do that third spray, there's no more adults to lay eggs, and all the eggs that were there have hatched. Now you've got true control. So you're just simply making that adjustment based on the population. And again, this chart's available. I have my cheat sheet that's available, but I suspect Angela's going to make this slide presentation of, there we go. Oh, I went too far. So that wraps us up. Wiley, you probably should turn on your mic. Does anybody has any questions? I'm going to look in the chat. Apple leaf curl midge. Tia, you're going to have to contact me. I put my email in there a little earlier, so please contact me. Yes, and Nick, Diana, again, just if you want that slide or you want that chart, just send me something directly. I sent my email address is in there, plus it's on this slide, so please contact me. Let's see. Sent you the chart. I think we're in good shape right now. So
yeah, and I just want to point out all of the people on the West Coast. Our colleague Jake Wiley is in the chat. He put his information. So Nick, he said that he sent you the chart. Y'all must talk pretty regularly. So anybody on the West Coast can reach out to Jake. He put his email in the chat there.
And please feel free to go to our website, profarmgroup.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, talk to an expert. You'll see our entire team. So you can find the person that is in your territory. But obviously, Steve and Wiley are great resources, and they can help point you to the right person too. So don't hesitate to reach out to them. I will be sending out the recording and the PDF of this PowerPoint presentation, along with Steve and Wiley's contact information after the webinar. It usually takes a bit just because I have to download and, pull the video together. Okay. So it might be tomorrow, but you all will be receiving that in your email. Do we have any final questions? I really appreciate everybody hanging around. It's for an extra 20 minutes.
There's one more technical question, Steve. Sage asked, how does the rotation handle Coleoptera pressure?
Oh, Coleoptera pressure. So that's beetles. I don't want to answer that question. So a sale does a great job on Coleoptera pest, but one of the weaknesses in the bio programs, I hate those kind of questions. One of the weaknesses in the bio programs is there's very, very little that it brings to managing Coleoptera pests. It was I'm 6 years with this company as of middle of next month in November. It was the first question I asked at the first meeting. Very, very little has changed. The way it was explained to me, and I am not an entomologist, I'm much more of a horticulturist who focuses on pathology, is that Coleoptera are very closely related to Hymenoptera, bees, etc. And what we really need is something that is safe around pollinators, but also kills beetles. And look, I've seen a lot come into the bio market since I've been here. Eventually we will solve those problems, but that is a problem to be solved yet. In the meantime, if you need to kill a beetle, get 2 nicely shaped bricks, put the beetle in between, squish it and twist.
Are there any final questions? Otherwise, given the time, I'm going to wrap up quickly. Thank you, Steve and Wiley, for being on and sharing insight. And for all of those that are still on, really appreciate you joining us today. We are having a full season of webinars. I know this timing is hard for a lot of people in the US because we're still in the heat of harvest. However, as we go into November, December, and the winter months, we will be having several more webinars. So if you work in different crops and are looking for more information on how to incorporate biologicals either into a conventional or biological organic program, welcome for you to join those webinars. Many of them will have continuing education credits as well. And you can check our website under the resources tab, hit webinars. You will start to see more webinars pop up. Our next one will be on strawberries, November 2nd. So again, thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Mr. B. I'm calling in regards to your.
Sorry, that was on my end, I think.
Okay.
All
All right. I'm going to wrap up. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you on another webinar. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
y'all.